Hey, Jake, what's that?
What is up, my fellow gooner?
No, absolutely not. We are hench people now. We are the Monarch's hench people. Please do not refer to me as a gooner, nor use the word goon. No one is gooning in here, and if they are, the Monarch said we're supposed to tell HR.
Okay. Sorry. What is up, hench person? I'm just playing with a shiny metal thing someone dropped on your desk. What are you doing?
I was actually going to go up to the top of the cocoon and jump off with my new wingsuit. I got the new tech.
Ooh! Sounds fun. I will join you after lunch.
All right. Have fun with whatever it is that you're doing.
Bye!
5 minutes later.
Oh, look at that. It has writing here. It says... Wing battery pack. Uh-oh! That means Dan's in danger. I should probably go give this to him. After lunch. They're serving Monarch nuggets today.
Welcome to Gate Crashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the doors to your next favourite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. My name is Jordan Edwards, my pronouns are he, him.
And I'm Dan, my pronouns are also he, him. Jordan, it's very exciting to have you back. I was just thinking about it earlier. The last time I recorded was Evil Dead, and you had just gotten out of bronchitis and... What was the other? You had two vocal sicknesses.
I still have the same issue, kind of, but that's a whole can of worms. Basically, I had tonsillitis, bronchitis, and laryngitis.
Yeah, you had triple force.
Like all in one, and that caused like permanent damage to my vocal cords. So
oh no!
It's been like a year and a half.
Your voice sounds good now.
So it sounds better, but it's still not fixed. So excuse me if I have to kind of cough my lungs out.
Yeah, I hope you don't. That sounds terrible. But today we are talking about something that I know you've wanted to talk about for a long time.
Indeed.
What are we talking about today, Jordan?
We're talking about The Venture Brothers, my favorite TV show of all time.
All right, tell me your background with the show. Like, when did you start watching it? What got you into it?
So, this is kind of funny given that my last episode was talking Evil Dead, because the answer is kind of exactly the same thing. Because if you recall on that, my introduction to Evil Dead was with a game called Poker Night at the Inventory 2, which is like a video game that Telltale did, where they just had a bunch of random characters cross over and just play poker. And I'm not someone who, like, plays poker. I've never played it in real life. But I was like, this seems fun. And you get, like, items for Team Fortress 2 and stuff. And I was like, yep, sure, I'll get on that. So 2 had Claptrap from Borderlands, Sam and Max from Sam and Max, which I loved, Thaddeus from Portal, which I also loved, and 2 characters I didn't know. First one was Ash from Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, but yeah, Army of Darkness, and then that was kind of my gateway drug to Evil Dead, bizarrely. And then the 4th was Brock Samson from The Venture Brothers, who I also really loved in that, and I was like, this character seems really cool. I like his design, I like his attitude, I like what he's about. I'm going to figure out where he's from. And then I kind of tracked that down, and that's how I got into the Venture Brothers.
That is the wildest. And it's wild that it's not just one origin story, it's 2.
No, it is 2. And it's not even 2, it's 2 of, like, my all-time favorite things. Like, Evil Dead 2 is maybe my favorite movie of all time. Venture Brothers is definitely my favorite TV show of all time. They both came from some random poker crossover game from, like, 2011 or something.
Can you still buy this game? Like, is it still on Steam?
I think it's been delisted, but I'll come back to it like every once in a while.
Damn.
Because
it's wild to think of those. Like, do they interact with each other? Like, do they talk to one another?
Yeah, so they'll have conversations and talk to each other. But the bummer with Poker Night 2 is that Ash isn't voiced by Bruce Campbell. It's like one of the only times that Bruce Campbell doesn't play Ash.
Got it.
But it's my first introduction to the character.
Yeah, so you still got to where you needed to go.
Yeah. But it's still weird to think that my first introduction to Ash wasn't with Bruce Campbell Very strange.
So I have it all. I have a weird. So I never watched Venture Brothers properly before we started this, but
Yep.
I can't remember what year it was. But my brother and I were at New York City Comic Con, and we were waiting for a panel, and we were in Hall H. No, not Hall H. I can't remember what they call it at the Javits. We were in the main theater. So we were there for one panel, and we had to wait for the next one. But between them, there was this panel called "Let's All Smoking." And it was the creators of Venture Brothers, who I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about the show. And I think this is one of the years where like the show was about to come back, or like it was a surprise comeback or whatever. And it turns out that they weren't allowed to smoke cigarettes on the stage anymore, because they used to do a panel where they just smoked cigarettes the whole time. So instead they smoked blue cigarettes the whole time. Like the entire time. I had no clue what I was watching, but I was like, kind of like this vibe. I like what these weirdos are putting down.
You can find a lot of the like Comic-Con panels on YouTube. They're always doing some bizarre thing, or like have like some stupid gimmick pre-20 each year, but they're always great.
They seem like bizarre people, which is totally fine after I've learned enough about this show, but I saw them later actually smoking cigarettes inside, and they were like hanging out over like, it was up, and they were like on a balcony or something looking down, and I looked up and I was like, and they waved back. I was like, oh, those guys seem nice. Never inspired me to go and watch the show, anything like that. But then now I have watched the first 2 seasons, which we'll be talking about today. It's wild. And I didn't realize like it had anything to do with Johnny Quest or anything like that. Because I remember that when I was a kid, like they have it on, I think it was still on Toonami. Maybe it was on Toonami, or just like late in the afternoon on Cartoon Network or something.
Right. Adult Swim.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, this show kind of reminds me of Johnny Quest. And then turns out, like, it's heavily inspired by that.
Yep.
So, all right, if you're pitching this show to someone who had never seen it before, what are you saying? Like, how do you, like, what's your pitch for Venture Brothers?
I think my pitch for Venture Brothers kind of comes off of what you said of, like, it being very close to Johnny Quest, because the Venture Brothers kind of started in 2003 as, like, an Adult Swim animated show about like kind of a family of adventurers kind of riffing on and parodying Johnny Quest and a whole bunch of other different stuff kind of like that. It was kind of adventure pulp novel stories of like the 60s and 70s and 50s, that kind of very retro aesthetic. It's kind of about this family that is kind of learning to cope with being in this bizarre world, but it's a world that has been bizarre for a very long time, so it's kind of all been democratized and like monetized, and everything's kind of been made bureaucratic. So it's just like there's always villains, but they have all these like codes and regulations and all this stuff to follow. So I'd say if you're into any of that kind of old kind of retro pop culture stuff, like 60s Marvel comic books and Johnny Quest, Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like 60s James Bond, I'd say you're totally in the market for what this is riffing on, because it's a loving parody of that, and I say loving parody very genuinely. I think a lot of stuff can be like, oh yeah, we really love source material, but the Venture Brothers, you really get the sense that they really love it. So say if you're a fan of any of that, it's really fun to kind of watch this and see it kind of start as kind of a parody, kind of like a loving homage to those kind of stories as well.
Yeah, because in the first 2 seasons, there are like straight up Marvel characters with like the name filed off, and like their satire, but they're so good and they fit so well in their retrospective world, like where they're at. I want to talk about them later, but there was one thing you said about it. Would you describe the show as pulpy? Because it does deal with a lot of like adventures definitely. And like
it's incredibly pulpy, and it's riffing on like pulp characters as well. Like a lot of people kind of talk about this as like a Johnny Quest parody and kind of leave it there, but it's a lot more than that. It's riffing on like Tom Swift and like Doc Savage, like the actual Venture Brothers themselves are a lot like the Hardy Boys. A lot of those kind of like stories around Johnny Quest are like very like they're very infused into the DNA of the show. It's not just, oh yeah, it's just a Johnny Quest thing. Like, it's kind of riffing on all of that kind of pop culture around the
like you can tell what these people loved. Like you can see what they're into.
Yes, definitely.
And a lot of shows have taken influence from this show. Like
yes.
Like straight up, I've heard so many talk about it when I was like, I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh my god, like this show is so good. There's also some Scooby-Doo elements, which I really like, and that comes directly into play later.
Yeah.
how did the show get started? Because I know you are a vast wealth of knowledge on these types of things. Where did these two meet is my biggest question.
Good question. So Jackson Publick was a writer for various TV shows, animated shows. One of the biggest things he worked on was The Tick. He worked on the animated show with Ben Edlund, and then the live-action show with Patrick Warburton, Venture Brothers' own Brock Samson. And then on that, he was kind of developing his own ideas for characters that didn't get to go on The Tick, but that he kind of wanted to workshop more. Kind of those goofy kind of like supervillain parodies that you just kind of throw in the background. He wanted to kind of focus on those a bit more and make a kind of whole story about that. So he kind of developed the story of the Venture Brothers, which was initially going to be a comic book for a comic book series called Monkey Suit. It was just going to be like a one-off story, which kind of just like toys with all these things that he was fascinated about and kind of loved as a kid. And then that kind of went to the back burner. He was working on a whole bunch of other stuff. And then someone, I think it might have been Ben Edlund, who suggested that he pitch it as an animated show. So then it kind of moved away from being a comic book to an animated show. And he started pitching it around, but weirdly, he didn't start pitching it to Cartoon Network first. He started pitching it to Comedy Central and didn't get anything there. And then eventually someone was like, hey, why don't you try Cartoon Network? They've got Adult Swim. They've got this new programming block of all of this kind of like cartoons and animated shows for adults. And he's like, oh, great, I'll submit it there. And then through Ben Edlund, the creator of The Tick, he met Doc Hammer, who kind of came onto the project as well and kind of added his ideas to it. And they kind of became firm friends and then kind of put it together, and since then kind of wrote and directed every episode of the show. But I think one thing that's fascinating to me is the fact that it wasn't always an Adult Swim show first, which I feel like if you know anything about Adult Swim is kind of like fascinating, because watching the first couple of episodes, I'm like, this has to have been made for Adult Swim, because this is like all that they were doing when they started. They were all just like riffing on Hanna-Barbera stuff. It was like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, C-Lab 2001, like Harvey Birdman, all that stuff where it would kind of take all of these old cell shading and all these old like animation cells they had from Hanna-Barbera and kind of repurpose them for kind of adult audiences. And like the Venture Brothers is riffing on the same stuff. Like it's being pitched to the exact same audience, but it wasn't kind of intended to be that, which I always kind of interesting.
That is so interesting. And like I would love to do an episode in the long run about Adult Swim, because like if you think about it, Adult Swim was what saved Family Guy. It's what saved like a bunch of weird shows that like didn't ever get their time to hit the stride. And it feels like Venture Brothers has been given like a wide berth of like getting things done, because there's like years between seasons, isn't there?
Yes. So part of the interesting thing with Venture Brothers is like it's basically all produced by two people. Most of them, not all produced, but like it has a series, like a kind of a degree of auteurship, which is so rare in TV, where Jackson Publick and Doc Hammer, they have written every episode except one, which is written by Ben Edlund, again, the creator of The Tick. They've directed every episode, they've edited every episode, they've designed almost all of the characters, like, all of the story is their own. They get very little, like, input and, like, creative notes from Adult Swim. They basically just let them do their thing. So it's kind of a very hands-off approach where it's just the complete, pure vision of these two people and the way that they see the world and the way that they kind of are kind of reckoning with their relationship to other people, to popular culture, with their own, like, regrets and mistakes and past and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a very personal project, clearly, for both of them.
It's so interesting to know that, because, like, the, you can feel it. Like, you can tell that this is the vision of these two dudes, like, these people.
Yep.
The cat, like, the stories, everything, it's like, yeah, this all makes sense. Like, and it's so wild, because, like, stuff like that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Like, there's no...
It sure doesn't.
Yeah, there's no unique vision. I mean, there is unique visions, but, like, it always has to go through these big companies and stuff.
Yeah, like, nothing this uncompromised. Like, nothing that is, like, taking swings this big and is playing to audiences, like, this niche.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many jokes where it's, like, I wouldn't get until, like, years after I watched it, because I watched some, like, obscure, like, B-movie from the 50s or something, where it's like, oh, that was riffing on that. Or, like, this, like, line was kind of, like, directly quoting some obscure song from, like, the 1980s or something that nobody listened to.
Yeah, because we'll talk about the David Bowie stuff, because, like, that's what got me. I was like, they're just doing Space Oddity. Like, they're literally line for line doing that and Ash is that. Like, what is happening here? And then, lo and behold, I found out later. But it's not, is it over now? Or is the movie, did that end it?
So, yeah, it went for 7 seasons and then was cancelled in 2018, which is, 7 seasons, the last season aired in 2018, and then it got cancelled 2 years later in 2020, which is obviously devastating. But then they announced a couple of months later that they're going to wrap it up with a movie, and that came out kind of the middle of last year, so 2023. But I'm hoping that there will be some way to bring it back, because apparently the movie did pretty well and sold pretty good, so I think there's a chance for it to come back. So I think everyone's going to say, like, never say never, but at the moment, yeah, it's basically done.
What would you say are some, like, the major themes that the show kind of digs into in its run?
Well, Jack and Doc have always kind of said that the main theme is about, like, failure, and all of the characters are in some way failures. They're screw-ups, they've done something wrong in their life to get where they are, and the whole show is kind of dealing with that on like a micro scale and like a maxo, I don't know, whatever. Like a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Macro, there we go, that's the one. Yeah, so it's kind of dealing with the ideas that like Doc Venture, for example, is the kind of maybe the main character of the show. The Venture Brothers are kind of, but they kind of get less character work for the first couple seasons. They're just kind of aloof, kind of airheads for most of.
They do get more development as they go.
Yes, they do. Okay. And they start to become more separate characters. At the beginning, they may as well like say the same lines as each other, but like by the end of the show, they are distinct, separate characters with their own arcs and like their own stories and their own like regrets and like a whole can of worms. So
I mean, I love it. I love them so far, so it's even cooler to know that like
yeah, they're great. But I think like Rusty Venture is Dr. Venture is their father. It's kind of the best kind of points to talk about when talking about like the themes of the show. Because one of the things I find so fascinating about it isn't that he's not like a Johnny Quest type. He is like, well, no, sorry. The Venture brothers themselves aren't a Johnny Quest type. Dr. Venture is, because he was the son of Jonas Venture, who was this kind of like big adventurer. So he kind of went on all his Johnny Quest adventures as a kid, and now he's kind of like doing all the same things he did that his father did to his own sons, and like not learning any of the same lessons, making all the same mistakes. And like he's trying to move past his failure, but he's not doing any of it well.
None of it well.
No.
I love him. I love these characters. There's so much I want to talk about this show. Now, who are you recommending this to? Like, what kind of people do you think are going to be into this show that should watch it before they listen to the rest of the
think it's easier to say now than it was like when it came out and like even like 10 years ago, because now so much of what like adult cartoons and like even just like TV in general is influenced by the Venture Brothers. Like if you like shows like Rick and Morty or like Harley Quinn, like all stuff like that, there's just like, or like Archer, I think like it just, those shows have clearly taken so much from the Venture Brothers, where it's like if you kind of jive with that kind of sense of humor, or you jive with that kind of like riffing on kind of old pop culture, then I think you really like the Venture Brothers. And like even beyond that, I think anybody who wants like a really well told story with incredibly well developed characters, a like shockingly well realized world, then I'd say Venture Brothers is a really good show to get into.
All of that is true. Like as I'm watching it, the Hanna-Barbera, you see here in your notes, you wrote about the Hanna-Barbera being an influence. And like, as a child, I loved Hanna-Barbera stuff. They used to have a ride at Universal Studios that was Hanna-Barbera. I loved that. Like, I love Scooby-Doo. And because that's like, I was a child right at the beginning, I think, of like Dexter's Lab and like the real heyday of Cartoon Network. What I remember more is like when I was a little kid, it was like Scooby-Doo and all that kind of stuff that was still on. And they're still around today. I don't know where the Hanna-Barbera company is in all of that. I think they got absorbed by Warner.
Yeah, they got absorbed by Warner like a long time ago. So
yes. So, but this show is available still to stream on Max for now. Is the movie on there? Do you know? I think it is. I think so.
Yeah.
Do they have physical releases of the show? Because it started before.
Yes, they do. But and a bit of what frustrating for me is like a collection of Blu-rays is that the full series was released last year before the movie, only on DVD. So a bit of a lesser like resolution, but you can watch it that way, and then all of the seasons are available on like DVD and Blu-ray accordingly. The first couple of seasons are DVD because they are standard definition. Yeah. So there's no point making Blu-rays of those because...
Did they release the whole series on Blu-ray or just DVD?
Just DVD. There's no Blu-ray for the complete series as of recording.
That's wild. And you said it was released last year?
It was released last year, and it's only for DVD, which is so weird because I feel like if you're a collector like that, and if you're into a show that's kind of niche and specific, I feel like you've got Blu-rays more than you've got DVDs.
Yeah, that's wild. That's very weird.
Yeah.
Huh.
It is weird.
Well, the DVD version of the show is out there. Trying to think, is there any... There's just the show and the movie. There's no, were there books or comics or anything about this?
No, this is it. It was a TV
easy.
show and it was a movie. Yeah.
Awesome. So if you want to watch season 1 and 2 before listening to our discussion, please do that because there is a lot to talk about with this show. So we will see you after the jump. All right, where do you want to start discussing this show? Because there's so much. There was so much in just, 26 episodes or something for the first 2 seasons?
Yep. I think I'd want to start, hearing your thoughts about it, especially, your thoughts of the pilot, and then how your feelings of it change. It'd really be fascinating to hear about, what you
I am glad you told... The pilot, what did you say? The pilot doesn't count? It's just, not canon?
It's dubiously canon. Some elements of it kind of come back, in the season 2 finale, I don't know if you noticed, but, the Monarch's henchmen, the uniform they have in the pilot comes back in the, 2-parter at the end of season 2.
Oh, it does,
so,
yeah.
there's stuff like that was, it's kind of... Yeah.
God, I can't remember the 2's name. I think they just go by numbers at this point.
21 and 24.
Yeah, what is it, 21, 24?
Yep.
Is that what you said? Okay. I love them. I think they're fucking hilarious. But I think the first couple episodes, maybe the first 3, I was like, okay, this feels a little dated. But once it clicked and I got what the show was, I was like, oh, this fucking rules. There are so many funny bits in this show. And I think the episode that cemented that I'm going to watch the entire show is... You might remember the name. I can't. It's the boat episode where there's a haunted space guy, where they open the episode with the David Bowie lyrics, and it's just a Scooby-Doo episode.
The Ghosts of the Sargasso.
Yeah, it was that, and then I think they called him a vampire, whoever, the necromancer that lived in the backyard, Dr. Strange.
Dr. Orpheus?
Dr. Orpheus. They were they have no idea who he is at first. He's just the guy who lives with them and his daughter. I was like, this is fucking hilarious. He's subletting his house.
Yes.
Because Dr. Venture is a fucking mess. And then Brock, I love how shitty Doc Venture is. Yep. I very much love that. When he revealed the stuff about the clones, I was like, you're such a piece of shit. Why are you like this? I loved it. I was blown away that I hadn't watched it before because of so many clear influences on the stuff I love or things that influence them that I also love. The David Bowie stuff, David Bowie literally being a character and fighting Iggy Pop, which is so funny, with the history of those two humans.
Yep. This is why I wanted to do this episode for so long, because I was like, I know that you are going to love this show to death, because so much of the stuff that I know that you love is, directly riffing on the Venture Brothers and kind of, carrying the baton, from the Venture Brothers. It's God. It's all there.
I think the favorite relationship is Brock and the boys, because, they'll hear Brock say stuff and they'll try to repeat it, and it's just no, please don't.
Yes.
But
I also love...
Go ahead.
I love that Brock is allowed to be a actual fatherly character as well.
Yes.
He's kind of a parody of the uber badass, I'm a big tough strong guy and I'll just kill anything, the big strong bodyguard character. They're also kind of riffing on the idea that in Johnny Quest cartoon, there's kind of two kind of father figures for the young Johnny Quest, which everyone kind of mock. But they're doing that very earnestly. Brock is genuinely a very paternal character at times. He'll actually console Hank and Dean or give them good advice. He can sometimes get sick of them, but they don't really mock him for kind of being being a softer character.
Yeah, and he is their dad. He's the one who gives a shit about them, and that's what I really liked about the show. I think one of the episodes they get taken by the Monarch, who then
one of
well, the first one where what is his wife, fiance,
Dr. Girlfriend?
Dr. Girlfriend. Dr. Girlfriend's like, no, you can raise them as your boys. And he like tries to be their dad. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like Brock is like trying to get them and their dad's just like, oh no, when Doc wakes up in a tub full of ice and looks where his kidney was, and he's like, damn it happened again. And then you see the other side, and I was like, all right, this is my type of show. And he gets like, what does he do? Gives himself dialysis using the robot that they absolutely abuse.
Helper.
Yeah, Helper is fucking great too. But Brock, I think Brock is one of the best characters I've ever seen. Like probably my top 5 animated characters. Number 1 being Roger Smith from American Dad, but Brock rules. Like everything that he has in the show. I'm excited to see where he goes, especially with I can't remember her name, but whoever he's in love with.
Molotov Cocktease.
Yes. Cocktease.
Which is an incredible like
so
Bond girl riff name. Like it's just it cracks you up every time they say it. I'm like, that's good stuff.
And Patrick Warburton. I watched a lot of Patrick Warburton in the past 2 weeks because I watched Series of Unfortunate Events and this. He's just such a good... His voice is so fucking good.
Yep.
Like, I don't...
Because like, growing up in the 2000s, Patrick Warburton was kind of like one of the defining voices of my childhood. Like, he's in like Emperor's New Groove. Like, Kronk was a big character as a kid. And like this... He's in like every cartoon. But like, for me, Brock Samson is his defining role. Like, that's a role that when I hear the voice, I'm like, yeah, that's Brock Samson.
I don't know what his... Probably, I can't remember the character's name. Peter's Family Guy.
Joe Swanson?
Joe Swanson.
Yeah.
All I can think of is him just saying, Peter.
Yep.
But yeah, all of it clicks in a way like I didn't think a show that I saw so many weird things from would work.
Yep.
Especially when we started introducing like the Marvel stuff, and I was like, this fucking just feels right in this world.
Yep. It's a strange like mix of a whole bunch of different stuff, which shouldn't really work at all. And I think season 1 is rough. And I'm glad that you pointed out like the Ghost of the Sargasso, that kind of boat episode, being the one that really kind of grabbed you and like made you realize that you love the show, because that's always my go-to recommendation for like a starter episode. Because I think if you're on board with that, then I think you're basically on board with the show. Because the first season is kind of like them kind of like fielding out like, what is this? Like, what are the kind of things we're riffing on? Like, what are the cultural touch points that are a part of this world? What are the things that feel a little bit too distinct from it and don't really gel with the whole aesthetic? And in season 2, they kind of like pick up a lot more. And in season 3, like it's one of the shows where I think I would say it improves every season, because some of them maybe take a little bit of a step back, but it basically improves every season, I would say. It's a show that just gets better as you watch it and gets more and more rewarding, because like the show's world building is just incredibly dense and so rewarding and like just absolutely...
The thing you mentioned to like be careful about is that there's always something at the end of the episodes.
Yes.
And like I made sure to pay attention to those because they do just come back. Like even like a couple episodes, there's like with Helper, like Helper falls out of I think it's an airplane or something at one point. And then he's just kind of fucked up for the next couple episodes, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So do things like from season 1 pop up in like season 4, like just small riffs?
As an example, there is a joke in the second episode of season 1, which like I'm sure you watched it and you didn't think anything of it. Like, oh, it's amusing. Comes back as a major plot point in season 7. So the show has absolutely insane world building, where it's clear that they keep track of every single thing they say, every single like offhand character that was like obviously just written as a joke, they will bring back in some form or referenced later. Like the actual like world building is so dense and so well constructed, and it actually clicks and gels together like incredibly well. Like for example, there in season 2, there is like the monarch is in prison, and he's kind of talking to his henchman about like stealing stuff from Sergeant Hatred, who I think you said at the end of season 2, and the kind of the finale of that season. But then in season 3, they bring that back where Sergeant Hatred's is like, oh, like you stole like all my weapons and stuff. Like he's really got like a bone to pick with him for that, and it's just like an offhand like mention in season 2. But yeah, like even stuff like there's stuff later where like in the kind of middle seasons, the Monarch's henchman like like other villains start to like poach his henchmen and start to like take away his staff, and he's like losing henchmen. So like as the seasons kind of progress, he starts losing more and more people, and then sometimes like there's one, I think it's in like season 6 where like one henchman will be like, "Oh, hey, I know you," when they're like fighting on the battlefield. He's like, he recognizes him from when he was one of the Monarchs guys. And again, that was just a thing that was mentioned like a couple of seasons ago, where they kind of keep that going on, and they keep kind of like building up the world naturally and organically.
I love that. The henchman thing is so... The Monarch... So the thing that I was talking about earlier is like, he's the major villain of season 1. And then like at the beginning of season 2, he's not in it for a couple of... Like he's like not a major player until he comes back. And it felt like they were like, okay, he's a really good thing and I don't want to wear out his welcome. Because like from then on, the Monarch is absolutely fucking hilarious. Yes. Like when he accidentally cucks himself in the first season, I was genuinely like crying, laughing because like he's like, wait, no, don't do that. And it's like, you're the one who set this up, dude. Like, and then they fall in love. Oh God. His psychotic relationship with Dr. Venture is so good. And I don't know if they really go into the origins of it in season 1 and 2, but like, is it something that gets explored later?
Yes, it's like their relationship and like their backstory and how they kind of began this rivalry is kind of a big, like a big kind of plot point that gets developed, and still a lot of unanswered questions around that.
Sorry,
the show is gonna
go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. Well, the show has a lot. I'm just gonna say this show will kind of give you a lot of questions, but it won't always answer all of them. There's going to be a lot of mysteries you're like, I don't really get like what that means or like who this character is. Like, you're not really ever going to find out.
I kind of like that though. Like it just kind of
it's like building other worlds, making it feel kind of dense and lived in.
But I was just looking at pictures and I was like, oh, this looks like a full cast picture. Do they get a MODOK at one point?
Yes. Do you want to know? Do you want to know who voices him too?
Yes.
Academy Award nominee Jeffrey Wright.
What?
Yeah, man, that's Jeffrey Wright.
That rules. I'm so excited to meet. Sorry, I'm just looking at this show has so much going on. I love Brock. Does Dr. Orpheus, does he stay as a big player throughout?
Yes, though he becomes a bit lesser of a character because they kind of struggle to find more ways for him to kind of be included in the story. But yeah, you'll kind of see why.
I just love that they basically formed like a Midnight Suns group of him, their Blade, I can't remember his name.
Jefferson Twilight.
Jefferson Twilight. Also, incredible name. Yep. And then the other guy, I couldn't really tell who the other guy was riffing on now. I couldn't tell if it was like a Wong type thing.
Yeah, it's mostly a Wong. Yeah, it's basically Wong.
Good. And they're just the dynamic of those types of characters. And then Doc Samson. Doc Venture has his two friends who, one was the boy genius, who's like that kid who was like always excelling, but then he grew up into an adult and is just like an adult man who's like 3 feet tall. Like, and then I can't remember his other friend's name, who was an albino. And
Pete White.
Yeah. Love that guy too.
Yeah. And like I think those characters are like a really good extrapolation of like what the show is doing, where it's like these are all like kind of archetypes of popular culture and like kind of classic characters. And it's like, okay, well, what if we like put these characters into like the sad reality of our world? Like what does a boy genius look like when they grow up? Like what is that reality like? Like what do you do with the rest of your life when you're like a boy genius or an aspiring boy genius? Or like, what if you are like a sorcerer, but you just had like a messy divorce and you need to find like a way to raise your daughter? It's just like, there's like all this stuff. It's just like, it's kind of forcing these kind of fantastical characters into like a more mundane setting, which at the time was like super novel and not done a lot then, but now is kind of like, that's what everything is. Like Harley Quinn's whole shtick is about like, we're going to have all these characters and it's just kind of like, it's like a 9-to-5 job for all of them. It's like the Venture Brothers was like the first to that. Like it is a pioneer in that kind of style of humor.
It truly, like, you can see it all here. Like it's all developing like right in front of me as I'm watching the first 2 seasons. I'm like, holy shit. The weird stuff it was like the through line of season 1 that God, I keep calling him Doc Samson.
Well, I mean, like, it's fair enough because, like, the show is very
Yeah.
indebted to Doc Samson. He is partly based on Doc Samson, so yeah.
Doc Venture has a twin inside. Like, he has, I can't remember what it was. If, like, he ate the twin or I can't, but then he just randomly gets a twin brother for the rest of the series, I assume.
Yes, for the rest of the series, there is a twin brother who came out of his innards called JJ.
Yeah. But I was like, yeah, I like that. Because it was like the Cassandra, Nova, Charles Xavier thing. And I was like, what the fuck is this show? And it's always like that. Like, it is what it is. Oh, who's the bad guy that they fight in season 2? Who takes Dr. Girlfriend?
Phantom Limb.
Phantom Limb. He has limbs, though. Like, you just can't see them.
You can't see them. So, if anyone hasn't watched it yet, Phantom Limb is a, like, invisible man type character who can have turn invisible, but only his limb. So, like, he's basically just a walking torso and a head. Like, you can't see his legs, you can't see his arms at all. Like, his power is that he's just got invisible limbs. So, he's called Phantom Limb.
And it's so funny because, like, at first I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that he just, like, floats. But he's not floating. He has those.
He's walking.
You just can't see them.
He has legs and arms. You just can't see them.
They do
and they have a lot of great jokes about that. Where he, like, tries to shake Brock's hand. He's like, I can't see your hand.
What was it? Dr. Orpheus has a master that he goes to at one point who is like the 3-headed Cerberus, but it's H. John Benjamin.
Yeah, the voice of Archer.
I was like, oh my God, like they got everybody. And I'm like, look at the cast list now. It's unbelievable how many J.K. Simmons is in it at some point.
Yes, but not for a whole lot. A lot of the kind of bigger cast names are like smaller supporting characters. They're only in a few episodes. I think one of the most impressive things about the whole show for me is the fact that like most of the cast is voiced by like Jackson and Doc. It is basically entirely voiced by 2 people, just doing like a variety of different silly voices.
It is so wild that they can pull that off. I guess I kind of understand it because, like, when you need to pull somebody in real quick, you just have each other. Like, oh, I couldn't get a voice for this. Just do it. Yeah.
And, like, it started out as this kind of just, like, grungy, kind of very niche, like, cartoon they were doing with, like, not a whole lot of money. Like, the pilot was made on, like, animated on Flash. Like, it wasn't a very big budget show to start out with.
I didn't know that. That's wild. The one that's on HBO, like, is...
Yep.
Wow. That's super impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize that. Huh. Damn, did they ever do anything after, like, do they still co-write stuff together, or this was just, like, their project?
This was their project. It seems like they're going to be doing different things. I think Doc Cameron, at least I don't think he has any interest in kind of continuing to write in TV, because he didn't really do any TV writing before this. But who knows? I'm still hopeful that they'll do something together, because, like, man, I am going to be, like, there day one for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the most unfortunate thing about Venture Brothers to me is that it's a show that would be so much more popular if it started, like, 10 years later.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things that is truly ahead of its time, where everything that it's kind of riffing on, everything that it's mocking, everything that it's kind of playing with, like, all of the themes and ideas that's working with, all that stuff is so much more popular and, like, respected and well regarded now. Like, its kind of approach to mental health and the actual, like, well-being of its characters is the kind of thing that, like, BoJack Horseman, as much as I love it, like, everyone's like, BoJack Horseman, it's kind of groundbreaking because it's, like, taking all these characters in this goofy setting, taking them really seriously and really delving into their psychology. It's like, Venture Brothers did that, like, 6 years before BoJack Horseman. And, like, yeah, and it's just, like, everything that Venture Brothers does is just, I think would play a lot better now, but it just came out too early to really gain that audience. And by the time that audience kind of came along, it was, like, they're in, like, season 5 and 6, and it was just, yeah.
It is interesting. Everyone brings up BoJack Horseman for adult animation. I watched a couple episodes and I just couldn't get into it. And people were like, Dan, you would love this. And I was like...
It's great. You just have to kind of stick with it a bit, because it kind of... It creeps up on you and how kind of existential and kind of, like, how well-written it gets as it goes on.
I love Arnett as a voice actor. I really love his voice. Maybe I'll have to go back.
It's similar to Venture Brothers, where I think it kind of starts off as just kind of like a silly comedy show, but then, like, by, like, midway through season 1, the end of season 1, you're kind of like, oh, this is something that's kind of delving into some more serious stuff.
Yeah, it's like, and Monarch has made me laugh every time he's been on screen. Who voices him?
Jackson Publick.
God, they do. I just cannot believe they did so much.
Yeah, like, the show is, like, 80% them. Like, obviously they don't animate it themselves, but, like, everything else, it's, like, it's all them. Like, it's just entirely their baby, and that's kind of what I love about it. It's, like, you so really get to see something that is purely the brainchild of two people.
Yeah, and just the way it grew over season 1 and 2, it's, like, it actually makes me want to, like, finish it, because I know there's going to be more riffs and things that I'm going to love about it.
Yeah.
And
it becomes a different show as well. Like, by the end of season 7, like, if you watch the season 7 episode and then go back to, like, season 1, it's like, man, this is a totally different show. But it still kind of keep that core root of comedy and humor. Like, it stays true to its characters while, like, completely transforming. Like, this is a show that, like, actually changes the status quo. There are major, like, earth-shaking, like, character revelations and character deaths and, like, major location changes that actually stick with the show, and, like, it, like, actually, like, pays it off, and it's like, okay, yeah, that big thing happened, we are gonna, like, stay true to that, and we're gonna, like, see where the story kind of takes us with that. Rather, like, most kind of, like, superhero kind of stuff like this, which is like, yeah, this big thing happened, we kind of, like, hand-wave it. Like, Rick and Morty, for example, will kind of do that, where it's like, oh yeah, this kind of big thing happened, but it's like the same old kind of shenanigans next season.
Push that into the corner.
Yeah. Whereas the Venture Brothers is like, no, like, this thing happens, we're gonna deal with that.
Damn. I didn't realize. I'm excited to see those changes, because, like, even now, like, characters like, wait, her name becomes Dr. Mrs. the Monarch?
Yes.
But, like, Dr. Girlfriend fucking rules. And, like, she went through so many changes in season 1 and 2, and, like, you get to understand that character. And then, like, as we talked about, the henchmen's 21 and 24, like, they just started as henchmen, but, like they get personalities through the show so far. Yep.
I think Dr. Girlfriend is one of the best examples of, like, the way that the show kind of naturally evolves. Because in, like, the pilot, she is just, like, a 1-second joke of, like, okay, the Monarch's, like, henchwoman has, like, a very deep, manly voice. Isn't that funny? Which, like, obviously, a very outdated joke.
Yeah.
It's an Adult Swim show. Like this pilot was made, I think, in 2001. So, like, yeah, not great. But, like, that character then kind of, like, grows and evolves and, like, keeps the voice, but it kind of stops becoming a joke, and, like, you kind of don't even notice it. Like, after a couple of episodes, just like, yeah, that's just how she talks. Like, you're just used to it. Yeah.
Because I was worried at first that it was going to be punching down. Like, I was like, oh, fuck. Is this going to be one of those, like, some of the, as I said, some of the jokes are dated. But a lot of the show doesn't ever feel like it's punching down. Like, it's not trying to hurt anybody.
No.
Which I really...
It's very earnest. Like, it's a very sincere show, which is what I've always appreciated about it.
That's what I really like.
Like, it's a show that is truly, truly in love with its characters. Like, it's so clear that Jackson and Doc love these characters to death, and they're, like, just want to keep writing stories about them for, like, as long as they can.
So, I did have a question for you, and I think we talked about it a little bit, but the Johnny Quest... Like, Johnny Quest originally, there was the dad and there was the man in the red shirt who wasn't their second dad, but, like, he was.
Their bodyguard.
Yeah, their bodyguard. But, like, he just straight up shows up in season 1.
Yes. So this is one of the fun things about the Venture Brothers being an Adult Swim show, which is, you know, underneath Cartoon Network, which is then underneath Warner Brothers, who owns Hanna-Barbera, which is, you know, they produced Johnny Quest. So they have the rights to use Johnny Quest. Like, they can use Johnny Quest. So, in, like, the earlier seasons, they were just straight up Johnny Quest characters. So in season 2, like, they just run into Johnny Quest. It was, like, a strung out, like, junkie who was, like, lost his mind because he was, like, traumatized as a child. Yes, like, they're just like, okay, yeah, he was, like, obviously traumatized as a child. Like, look at all the stuff he went through on Johnny Quest. And, like, the bodyguard, like, he said Race Bannon shows up in season 1 and is killed in season 1. Eventually, like, Adult Swim kind of came in and was like, actually, like, You can't do that. Like, you can't just use, like, our intellectual properties like that, like, for names. But the characters will stick around. They'll just take on different names. So Johnny will now be called, like, Action Johnny season 3 or forward, for example.
That rules. That maker was like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah. But it's a kind of thing that, like, if the show did come out now, like, you wouldn't be able to do anything like that. I don't even know if they would let you parody it, because they'd be like, well, we want to use this intellectual property for something down the line, because it's obviously a big franchise material or whatever, right? But it's like, back in like 2003, they're like, Johnny Quest? Yeah, I don't give a crap. Do whatever you want with them. Like, sure, race bands at the show? Yeah, kill him. I don't care.
When he falls out of an airplane, I think
he falls out of an airplane.
They just find him like dead on the road.
And then a bunch of kids like play on his dead body and like ride around on his like parachute and stuff.
It's so
like,
fucking good.
It is because it's the kind of thing that now like internet fanboys would cry about being like so disrespectful to their childhood thing. Where it's like part of the fun of the Adventure Brothers is that it's like it's so loving of all this stuff, but like it's so irreverent and like doesn't care about any of it at all. Like it's understanding that all these characters are kind of inherently childish and that like loving Scooby-Doo and Johnny Quest and all stuff is kind of still childish. Like it's kind of it's kind of hanging a lantern on it, but it's a weird dichotomy where it's being endearing about its love, but also like not shying away from the kind of darker side and the kind of like
making a joke. Like it's a funny joke.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't remember what episode it is. I think it's in season 2, and something bad happens, and Doc Venture's twin brother has to like gather up all of these like special forces to help them get free. But it has like the Action Man character, who's the guy in the helmet, and it's just like the fish guy who randomly comes out of nowhere. And it's like this world is so populated with characters that make logical sense. Like they were friends with their dad and it's just like, oh, also their dad, like the legacy that kind of hangs over them. There's an episode where basically like they get a transmission from him to open this portal to stop like this alien thing. Mm-hmm. And the portal opens and like the dad walks out and they're all like, where the fuck have you been? And he's just like not answering anything. And then he's like, well, all right, I'm an alien. Like I just did this so it'll be easier for you. Leave me alone. And I was like, that is so fucking funny. Like that joke lands so well because no one else made jokes. Like it's such a weird thing.
Yeah. Like it's got such a specific sense of humor where it's like, it's kind of a hard show to recommend because it's like, there's a lot of stuff to compare it to, but like, the specific kind of comedy it has, like, is not really, like, in a whole lot of other stuff,
It's like, it's really much its own thing.
Yes, very much so.
Again, you can see the influences elsewhere, but there is just some stuff in the show that is just, like, so specific to people who like things. Oh my fucking god. That same episode, I can't remember his name. I wrote it down because I wanted to talk about him. But it's the alien with he like wears
Ignore me.
Ignore me.
Ignore me.
That made me laugh.
That's a big meme within like the Adventure Brothers community. Like
that made me laugh so fucking hard because it's just this random alien who's judging them. But he's not like invisible or anything like that. He is like
he's a massive dude, but he wants everyone to just like kind of like ignore him and be like, I'm not here. Like just go about your business. For it's like we can't, man. You're a giant alien.
With Brock and Doc Venture like in their plane, and he's in the back, and he says something like makes them want to talk to him, but he's like, ignore me. Like it is so just like one-off jokes like that are just funnier than like anything else I've seen.
Yeah.
Does he ever come back, or he's just like a one-time?
No, that's it.
Rules.
That's it.
I love that. There's just like
some
so
characters
many
will be
like
like one-off, and some characters will come back. But not him.
The one I was really excited to talk about is the Fantastic Four parody.
Yep.
I used to Stephen Colbert as Mr. Fantastic at first.
Professor Impossible.
Yeah, Professor Impossible. He is exactly how I think of Reed Richards. Just a huge asshole.
Yep.
And like the episodes with their Fantastic Four are so fucking funny.
Yep.
Because it's like she is in love with Doc Venture, and Doc Venture's like, "Ooh, I don't want that." Like he's like, "You're too clingy," and her invisibility is just like her skin turns translucent.
Yeah, well, it's that thing of like it's just kind of taking all these kind of silly comic book things and kind of putting them into reality. Not like a boring like, oh, we're gonna make it realistic. More being like, what would happen if you were invisible? Like, okay, well, what if it was just like a skin that turned invisible? Like, that was it. They're like, okay, you're a Human Torch, you can light yourself on fire, but what if like all your pain receptors are still working and you could like feel that?
God, there's so many funny bits like that. What is your favorite parts of season 1 and 2?
Probably Escape to the House of Mummies Part 2. Like, that's the one where the first time I watched it, I was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. It's completely inexplicable. It's like, you show that to somebody like, hey, I love the show. They're like, you seem like a crazy person.
I loved that episode because I legitimately had to get up, grab my controller, and make sure I didn't miss an episode. And I was like, wait, this is part 2? There's no part 1. There's no part 3.
That's the joke. It's just
good.
part 2, inexplicably.
Oh, God. When he puts Edgar Allan Poe in a headlock. Again, Edgar Allan Poe's in the episode. He's like, I've always wanted to do this. And it's like, why were you thinking about putting Edgar Allan Poe in a headlock?
Yeah, and how do you come up with a joke like that? I don't know how your thought process kind of comes to that conclusion that Brock Samson has always wanted to put Edgar Allan Poe in a headlock because his head looks like a pumpkin. But, all right. Like, to me, that is kind of the distillation of the show at its best, where it's just kind of just wacky pulp nonsense.
I love that, but I really do love that there's like the through line stories.
Yeah, for sure. It juggles both really, really well.
It like handles it. Oh God, there's so many funny bits from the first season. Like the mummy that I think it's Dean. Which one's the blonde brother?
Hank.
Hank's like, I can talk to him, and it's like, what? You can talk to a mummy? And the mummy, I think his head pops off. There's just like, from every episode, I was just laughing because it was so well written. But, like, everything is earnest and, like, jokes just always seem to land.
Yeah, and the joke's always rooted in character, which I think is always really, really great. Like, the fun thing with the Venture Brothers is that, like, it's not just, oh, yeah, they're stupid. It's that, like, they're only, their only, real world experience is, like, crazy, like, Johnny Quest adventures. Of course, they would be, like, completely stunted, like, man-children who, like, can't have any kind of process of, like, how the world actually operates. And they've got no, like, social ability. Like, all of their knowledge comes from, like their beds, which kind of feed them with information overnight. And it's all from, like, all old retro stuff that, like, Jonas Venture gave them. So, like, their vernacular, the way they approach everything is all, like, so 60s.
The beds fucking feed them because he makes a zombie at one point.
Yeah.
He makes a Frankenstein just like to do it.
Yeah.
There's so many instances of Doc Venture hearing the phrase, should you play God, and being like, yeah, why the fuck not? Let's do it. He's such a stupid asshole, and I love it.
It is, but it's all rooted in character, right? And it's really earnest about its character. It's like, the reason he's doing that is because he's trying to live up to his father's legacy. Like, he feels that he's completely
Do they deal with that in the show? Like, is that like something that keeps coming up?
Yes. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, definitely. There's an episode focusing on Rusty in season 3, which I'm really excited to get to and hear you talk about. That's one of my all-time favorite episodes, where it has Dr. Henry Kissinger back, who's one of the best characters. He came up in season 2, right? Yeah.
Dr. Henry, is he the one that wears the sweater?
No, he's like the magic murder bag. Maybe he's not.
The what?
He's got a magic murder bag. He's based on, like, Henry Kissinger. He's Henry Kissinger. He's got, like, the black and, like, red mask.
Hold on, let me look it up. Oh, I only saw him for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he was in a couple of episodes. But I love his look.
Yeah.
And he's a big
it's just
part
like,
of it.
They're just like, what if you made, like, Henry Kissinger, like, what if you made him, like a weird, like, a demon man?
I mean, he kind of was.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like, yeah, like, what if he's made that explicit?
God, I didn't even think like that makes so much sense. Now I'm like looking at pictures of like, and like the cool thing about coming to a show this late is there's like so much cool fan art and stuff out there, and there's already people who love it. So like, I just like can talk about it now, and like I can keep up with those conversations
for sure.
But they do go into his like past, which I'm excited to see. Oh, the one episode with the lady who said she was their mom.
So that has the joke that got me to watch the show. So I played Poker Night 2, and I liked Brock Samson, and I kind of look into it more. And the first clip I saw was the clip when she is kind of like driving towards Brock, and he kind of like stands out on the road and like puts his arm out and does like some breathing, and then he like kind of falls backwards into the car and like crushes her. Do you remember that bit?
Yes.
It's so
I'm
good.
just thinking
I remember
about
watching that for the first time. I'm just I couldn't stop laughing. It's just so funny.
there is so much good everyone, Brock is such a cool character. And I'm just so excited getting to see more of him. And he's not there's the one scene where he's with Molotov cocktease and she's can't go past second base. And he's just fuck. And I'm aw. It's the whole show, just everything has worked for me and I've loved it. God, the fucking zombie. I'm just thinking about it. They're eating fucking breakfast and there is a undead man sitting at one end of the table, gurgling. And the boys are just what did they say? Why is the top of his head black? And they're no, you can't say that anymore. And it's he's asking there's so many little jokes that I'm wow, that is very good wordplay.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see them get to grow as characters, but fuck, Brock is so cool. And I'm really excited to see where the Monarch goes because at the end of season 2, he's not really their bad guy at the moment. They had to team up to fight David Bowie. David Bowie got beat by Iggy Pop and whoever that screaming mime guy was.
Yep.
Who
it was an actual real world parallel, but I can't remember who it's for.
Yeah, I couldn't really pin it. The Iggy Pop one I totally understand because of David's past. But when David Bowie comes back, they turn him to a pack of cigarettes, and then turns out he can transform into different forms for some reason, and he's the head of the bad guys. Yeah. He walks in as Iggy Pop, and as the one person who has the Black Canary scream powers, he kisses them, and all the or he holds his hands over their mouth, and the screaming just pops their fucking head. And I was yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yep.
And it's just stuff like that every episode.
Yeah, it's consistently great. I don't really think there are any bad episodes. It doesn't really. There's some episodes that I like less than others, but I like all of them. And as it goes, it's just man, every episode is just banger after banger.
And they have a bunch of cool oh god. Kevin Conroy is in an episode, right?
He sure is. I'm not going to tell you what his role is because it's best let you experience yourself. But it's so funny. The way that they use him is really great.
I love their riffs on the superhero stuff because that's what I'm into. But the way they do it is Dr. Orpheus is one of my favorite characters just because he's so fucking wild. Or when Hank is going to go on a date and they tell him to dress in his best and he wears the fucking Batman pajama set.
Yeah.
That got me. I was that is so funny. They're so genuinely earnest people. They're just this is what they genuinely think is what looks good.
Yeah. Because they grow up in a world of crazy super science running from supervillains all the time. Of course that's what they think. They've got no real world connection at all.
Do they have a real parent other than him? Or are they just made?
That is the number one question throughout the show, and you are not going to get an answer for a very long time.
Good.
But,
I like that though. I like having to wait.
Yes, that's something that's great about the show as well, is that Jackson and Doc are openly hostile to their audience. If the audience is I want to know the answer to this, they'll be cool, we're not going to answer that. They have actually actively changed plans sometimes, just because fans have been I want to do this. They're okay, if they want to do that, we're not going to do that.
That's funny. I know the Rick and Morty people did that too for a long time. When people would figure out theories, they would just change it. Yeah, but
it goes even beyond that. Do you know the Muppet characters, Dr. Girlfriend's two little henchmen?
The Muppets?
The Muppets, yeah.
Hold on, let me look them up. Again, worst memory. Yes,
the two little guys.
Yes, in the little sailor outfits.
Yes, those two guys. Yes. So those two characters were hated by a lot of the community. People were these guys are stupid. What is the joke? I don't they're not funny. So they're okay, we're gonna make them more of a major character in the next 2 seasons.
Fucking love
just because
that.
just to spite their audience. It's great. More shows should have that kind of attitude. Everything is too like, oh yeah, we love the fans and everything is do it, but like, nah, we're just gonna like do what we want to do.
You don't like these characters? Fuck you. Can't wait to see more of them. I love that. And you can't, I don't think you can do that now because like, so much relies on like like the views and stuff like that.
Yeah, you gotta be like reverent to the fans and talk about like how anytime any actor joins a project, it's like, oh yeah, I've been a fan of this property for like my whole life. I loved it when I was a child. Or it's like, you could just say you showed up for a paycheck. That's cool. But it's like, people don't do that anymore.
Is there anything else you want to cover with these 2 seasons?
That's a good question. So what were your like your big episodes that you really loved?
The finale, because getting to see these 2 sides get to work together. Also, the fact that the henchman got fucking hammered and did what Monarch could never do. They just like drove over and just beat the shit out of like, and they just won. They're just like, yeah, we got Brock.
Yeah, my favorite thing about the finale
is... Yeah.
My favorite thing about the episode is just that, like, all of the henchmen, like, they just love and admire Brock so much. They're like, oh, I love you, Brock. I'll listen to anything you say. It's like, he beats them up all the time, but they're just like, oh, he's so cool. We love Brock Samson. He's the best.
He doesn't just actively beat them up. He murders them.
Yeah, he kills several. He kills a lot of them.
Oh, God. They like hit him with a car at one point, and they bury him in the desert. That episode, those 2 episodes were staying out for me. The episode with Monarch where he sends Dr. Girlfriend and she ends up falling in love with Dr. Venture is fucking so funny. The Scooby-Doo episode with the serial killers being Scooby-Doo characters.
Yes. Which is just an insane pull. Like, I still can't believe that works as an episode, but it totally does.
The double date episode I really, really enjoyed. Because everyone's going on dates. That episode was so like nice. It was like a nice episode because like they're still like they're kids. Like they're stuck in the shadow of a shadow because their dad will never escape from his father and they are kind of just fucked because of that. Yeah.
You get a bit more of that as it goes on. There's a lot more kind of like hangout episodes where it's not really a whole lot of plot happening or
it's fine by
like
me.
No big adventure. It's just kind of like the characters just kind of hanging out and you're going to spend a bit more time with them.
I love that. The henchman getting drunk and doing the impossible is so funny to me. I'm trying to think. I genuinely loved every episode was incredible. I'm trying to think if there's any other big standouts for me. The Christmas episode.
Are there any that you didn't love? Like any that you thought were kind of meh?
I probably wouldn't rewatch the pilot.
Yeah.
It was okay. Like, it was the first 3 episodes I liked, but it wasn't like enough to like pull me in to keep watching. Like, I'll watch that finale again, like right now. Like, I loved that finale. But no, I genuinely, like, it was within the first season was like, I'm going to watch this entire show, which sometimes it doesn't lock in that way for me, but I will be finishing Venture Brothers.
Yeah, it's got that effect on people. It's great.
What are your highlights of season 1 and 2?
Escape from the House of Mummy. It's kind of, that's always my kind of my go-to. The Ghost of Sargosso, I think, is just always great. Tag Sale You're It, I think, is pretty phenomenal and very funny. And like, I think that's another good example of like the natural world building of a show where the Guild of Calamitous Intent, which you don't know, is kind of an organization that kind of unites all of the villains together. And it's kind of like, this is their kind of bureaucratic system of like they set up who is going to be the villain for which hero and stuff like that. That was only set up for that episode because they had the idea of, okay, what if like Dr. Venture had like a garage sale and like all those villains came to like buy stuff? And, like, okay, well, why wouldn't they just like kill him? And like, oh, well, what if there was like rules that you couldn't kill like your heroes on specific days or for specific events? Like, okay, so they built the whole guild like out of that. It just the whole show is kind of comes from those kind of very natural points of what is a natural endpoint of this question. Like, it's like, okay, this world is doing that. How does everyone else kind of respond to it?
I loved. And I think the cool thing is, like, with this season, the Capes and Cowards kind of theme, like, I'm watching these things. I watched this, Mystery Men, The Boys, and Red Minor Threats. But, like, it's these, like, kind of observations on things I love that aren't, like, direct. And it's such an interesting, like, how I watched Mystery Men this morning, actually. And, like, watching this and talking about this show is, like, some of these things were out before, like, they were out before the things are even commenting upon were out. Like, Mystery Men is, like, a total farce on, like, the superhero movie. But the superhero movie wasn't out yet. Like, it was just Blade. Like, if you watch Mystery Men now, you'll be like, oh my fucking God. Like, the walk through the smoke to see the new final costume bit. Like, all of it's there.
Yeah, yeah.
But this has that, like, it's like, this is like mocking stuff that even today there's still jokes about.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I always say, like, it's time. Like, it straight up is.
Yeah. And I'm glad I watched it now instead of when it was on, because I don't think I can handle the
the waits between seasons was one of the rough parts about being a fan. It was just like, you had to wait like years to kind of like for the next season. Like sometimes like 3 or 4 years could be between seasons. It was a long wait.
And like sometimes did you even know there was going to be another season, or is it like?
I mean, like it's one of those shows where it's like as you're watching it, you're just like, I can't believe this is still on the air. Like, it's kind of crazy that it managed to last 7 seasons. And, like, every time I think about it being cancelled, I'm like, well, I'm just grateful that we got so much of it because it's the kind of show where it's just like, no other network would, like, bankroll something like this.
And honestly, I'm thinking about, like, the shows that were on in that time. What was it, like, home movies and, like, shows that didn't...
Tim and Eric and stuff. Yeah. Like, nothing had this kind of depth to it on Adult Swim, really, at the time. And even since, really, like, it's still mostly a comedy channel, which is fine. Like, I love a lot of Adult Swim stuff, but it's just like, it's kind of unprecedented.
Is there any other things you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think we've about covered it.
Listen, I've got a lot more to say once I'm done season 3 and all of that, but
I'm very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts as you continue watching.
It's such a good show.
It's the best.
I'm glad you were here. Thank you for listening. Catch us again
Thank you for having me.
Next week for another episode of our Capes and Cowards season. You can find us at gatecrashers.fan, where we do all of our reviews, analysis, and all that kind of good stuff. Thank you. See you next week.
See ya. And go Team Venture.
Go Team Venture!
I don't know. They just do that.